I'm going to talk to you about capital punishment and why I think that we should keep it in our federal and state governments. On the side, I work with commercial insurance, and I handle a lot of the correctional facility insurances. So I've started seeing, and it got my attention, that all of these prisoners and inmates get extremely good health care, and we, the taxpayers, are paying for it. So I started looking more into it, and I found a quote by poet Hyman Barshay that says, "The death penalty is a warning, just like a lighthouse throwing its beams out to sea. We hear about shipwrecks, but we do not hear about the ships and the lighthouses that guide them safely on their way. We do not have proof of the number of ships it saves, but we do not tear the lighthouses down." All of the records and rulings for death penalty cases are available to the public, and as members of American society, we have access to them. And as taxpayers, I think it's definitely our business to pay attention to what we're giving our money to. Capital punishment is a very popular debate. In many states, they're reevaluating their laws regarding the death penalty, what's acceptable, what kind of charges are legally punishable with the death penalty. And the question that comes about is, do many people really understand what capital punishment or the death penalty really is? There's 36 state governments and federal governments that have reinstated the death penalty. It's been happening since ancient times. You can't really watch a Western movie without seeing someone be hung or things like that. In 2002, it was ruled that the jury must convict an inmate or criminal to be put to death. It can't just be one single man, which I think makes it a lot more fair. If you have a crooked judge or someone that's being paid off or something like that, it's a lot easier to turn one man corrupt than it is a jury that's selected by both sides of the court proceedings. There are 60 crimes that are currently punishable by the death penalty, the most common of which is murder. From 2000 to 2001 in the U.S., according to the FBI statistics of reported murders, there were 4,052 people murdered. And from 1970 to 2009, which is a lot bigger span, only 9,772 people were executed. So compared to the amount of people that lose their lives by murder, a lot fewer people are put to death for heinous crimes. So now we'll look at some of the pros for keeping the death penalty in state. The long-term costs of keeping criminals alive far exceed that of the court processes for appeals. If the multiple layers of appeals are pursued in an ethical and fiscally responsible manner, execution is less costly than warehousing a murderer for life. And that was Gary D. Beatty, who is a Florida state attorney. And Edwin H. Sutherland, who was the president of the American Sociological Society, also said, "It is not cheaper to keep a criminal confined because most of the time he will just appeal just as many times, causing as many costs to convict under death sentence. Being alive and having nothing better to do, he will spend his time sitting in prison conceiving an ever new habeas corpus petition, which, being unlimited, in effect, cannot be rejected as res judica. The cost is higher." So we sit there, and many states give these inmates the opportunity to work, and they pay them for it so that they can spend the money on things or save it. They have time to pursue their education. I don't commit crimes, and I have to go to work every day and do homework every night, and on my spare time I don't just have all day to sit and read or do things like that. While inmates are in prison, we pay for them to eat, sleep, get educations, appeal their cases, and overload prisons. So many times you can see on the news that prisons are overloaded. They don't know where to send these people or what to do with them half the time. So if we had fewer people in the prisons, or people who perhaps could be in for a while and then get out and hopefully turn our lives around and be upstanding citizens of society. I think that's a lot better use of our money, space, and time. Another thing that really strikes me is the consolation for victims and their families. I think it would be really hard to have lost someone in your family or had something extremely tragic happen to someone in your family or yourself, and then have that person go to jail, and in 10 years they're out on parole, possibly being fearful for your safety, if they could come after you, if you had testified, or anything like that, or that they could do the same thing to you and someone else again. That's the problem. If I knew that everyone that went to jail could and wanted to change their lives or turn things around, it'd be a totally different story, but so many people don't. And the second they get out, they're doing something else. I read in the paper once a man who had just finished serving a sentence for his 12th DUI, and he was not even out 3 days and got his 13th. I just don't think that people want to change sometimes, so I don't think that as American citizens we should be fearful of them getting out again or paying for them. Victims in Connecticut have a constitutional right to make statements to the court at sentencing, and the Commission strongly believes that the victims' impact statements are there and should be a critical part of the criminal justice process. In many cases, victims, friends, and relatives want the accused to hear and understand the impact that the crime has had on them. The state of Connecticut Commission of the Death Penalty said that, and I think that's really important. I think a huge part of therapy and counseling is facing your fears or facing a person who may have hurt you, and I think that offers a lot of closure for someone who's been through something terrible. Also, I think maybe it sinks in a little bit for someone to hear what they've done or to know that. I think it kind of lets someone off scotch-free if they don't have to have the courage or gain the courage to face somebody like that. While the justice system is fair and plays only a small part in the court proceedings, it is fair for victims to get to voice their pain, face the accused, and state their opinion on the matter. When it all comes down to it, though, the only person who can actually issue a life sentence or a capital punishment sentence is the judge after hearing everything and a jury convicting a person. The death penalty is a well-regulated piece of the judicial system and has served a large purpose throughout history. As members of society, I feel it is our right to feel safe and protected, and as if we can rely on the laws that govern our nation. I know they're not perfect, but we have to rely on them somewhat, or what have we been doing for the entire time our country has been around? It is our right to support these laws that keep the balance of justice in our great country. If we execute murderers and there is, in fact, no deterrent effect, we have killed a bunch of murderers. If we fail to execute murderers and are doing so, in fact, have deterred other murderers, we have allowed the killing of a bunch of innocent victims. I would much rather risk the former. This, to me, is a tough call, said the John McAdams, who was a member of Marquette University.